Hey guys and girls, Bored now, back with you. On this video I'm going to be talking about the first two episodes of the new Apple TV sci-fi series Sunny. Episode 1 is called He's in Refrigerators, episode 2 is called Don't Blame the Machine. So I will be going into some full spoilers, and I'm just going to sum up really my impressions and thoughts on the opening two episodes. These were put out as like a double premiere. After that, it's going to be one episode a week, which is becoming standard now with some streaming series. So the setup for this one is that it stars Rashida Jones as Susie. She's been living in Japan for a while now. She's settled down out there with a guy. They've got married. They had a young son. But at the start of the episode 1, we find out then her husband and the son have died in a random plane crash. But there's suggestions at various times that they could still be alive because the bodies haven't yet been found, and there's definitely question marks placed on that later on. But as a result, Rashida Jones is left with a robot, Sunny, of the title, and it really sets up modern Japan as being very into technology, like technology, AI, robots, that kind of thing, have become commonplace, which you can believe. I don't know if it's being exaggerated for this show or if that's really the case out there, because when you think about how much technology and AI, things like that, are becoming commonplace in our sort of country, in like Western countries, then you can probably believe that they could be at this stage in Japan, considering they've always been ahead of the game when it comes to these things. But in any case, Susie is left with this robot, and it's come from the tech firm which her husband was working at. And it's at that point then it's revealed then he was actually working on the robot. So he's not been 100% truthful with her, because he's always said that he worked in the refrigerations department, and she learns that wasn't exactly true, that he worked on this robot and it's now been left down to her as something for her to look after, maybe partly to fill the void from her son dying also, and to keep her company, things like that. So because her husband programmed it, it's revealed that it's been moulded to suit her. And one of the most surreal scenes of the first two episodes is a moment where the robot actually recreates like a facial movement, a hand movement that her husband used to do, because we get flashbacks of when her husband, I think his name's Mecca, something like that, and the son left to go on the plane, and as he's leaving he gives that hand like gesture and movement of the face. So it clicks in her brain that, hey, that's something he did. So over the course of the two episodes, she does get more comfortable with the robot, and once again, it's going into that old thing of like, we mold these robots into like visions of like loved ones, or like visions of ourselves. We use our own like memories and DNA. Well, not DNA, but memories and characteristics, and we kind of make them as detailed and as human-like as possible. So things start to blur, and like, how far does it go? Because it's also implied by someone she meets in the bar quite early in episode 2, then it could be the case then, or it has been the case, then this robot, or a robot like it, push someone down the stairs on purpose so that the robots could go into business for themselves, or at the very least, like, they could be manipulated and used for sinister purposes. So it's definitely getting into all that kind of things, while at the same time being quite a quirky character type drama with some dark humour in it, I would say. So, just to sum up my thoughts, I was quite into it. I'm enjoying it so far. It's a very good performance from Rashida Jones. And I think she's good in it because if you think about her roles in the US Office and Parks and Rec, which that's what most people would know her from those shows, she she sort of plays the kind of straight character in those episodes. Like, she definitely has moments where she is very funny, and you can see in those shows and also in this show so far, she has a very sharp delivery. She also does deadpan very well, like, and she does that in this show because it is a different sort of character. Like, it is a more isolated character. It is, because of what she's going through, it's a much more sort of dour type character. But yeah, in those shows, in those comedy shows, she does play the more straight type roles where it's almost like she's reacting to things, and but she is very sharp in the way she delivers lines and the way she responds, and as I said, does deadpan very well in this. And so I think because of that, it's quite a natural transition into something a little bit more dramatic in this case. So she is excellent throughout the first two episodes. Like, I think they've cast her to perfection. Also, as I said, I think getting into some of the like question marks about modern tech and about the future with AI and robots and stuff, it always seems quite relevant nowadays, and like, that stuff I think is also done very well. You've got a little bit of a slow burn mystery in there. Although I don't think the mystery is like that central in many ways, it's definitely hinted at, and I think the smart little touches where things the robot will say, or things that comes from like the flashbacks, where we explain some of the backstory with Susie and her husband, it'll just like set up certain things, and that sort of jog her memory, or makes her start to suspect certain things. So I think it's been done quite well. I think there's a nice sort of balance. I like that it is this quirky sort of sci-fi. Sometimes quirky can go one way or the other, and it can become a bit too quirky. And I think with this, it's a bit of a balance in that, because the robot does look quite sort of like, I don't know about cartoony, but it does have that sort of like innocent type look about it, and it's quite playful sort of look. I mean, when it goes to sleep and the owner can tell it to go to sleep at any time, like, you do get like the sort of snoring type symbols come up, and it's got quite a perky sort of face and like tone about it. But like, there's a balance to be had, because I think you could go too far into that path, and you could make it then the robot is almost like really central. But I think they've got a good balance. I think they followed this main character along, and a lot of it is about the backstory. But yeah, I think at the moment they're getting the right balance for me anyway, and I'm intrigued to see where it all leads. So one of the things that we see really early on is then this character Susie has a very spiky sense of humour, and one of the things that then it does well in those opening scenes is that it really gets to grips with like the process of dealing with death, and this surreal feel that death has, and the idea of death has on you, and how I think each person approaches it differently. But this is a woman with a very, I don't know if it's fair to say dour, based on like she's dealing with something really extreme, but I do wonder if maybe that was her outlook anyway. And it's interesting when you see the flashbacks, because it seems like this is a woman who just felt like a change and took a chance, like randomly moving to Japan. And that it was, she says in the flashbacks when she meets her husband or future husband in the bar, then it was kind of like, I like the culture, I like the idea of the culture, and it just seems like it was a bit of a shot, and it seems like things escalate quite fast with the relationship, and it's going to turn out then there's more to him than meets the eye. She didn't know about the department he worked in. Also, at one point when she like breaks into his lab looking for answers, there's blood on the floor in the lab. So there's question marks over that. We get a tease of that in the opening sort of flashback, which is a scene with him and the robot. So there's things like that, but some of her reactions to things in the first part of the episode I did really enjoy. Like, she's being asked questions. She's with her mother-in-law, and there's something like true to life about those exchanges where she just seems constantly on edge around the mother-in-law, and like they don't seem to be getting on. Now, whether they've never gotten on or if it's just this sort of strange situation where it's like maybe in the past she was comfortable around her as long as her partner, her husband, was around, but now maybe she's suddenly faced with having to deal with her and having to deal with a more tense situation because they're both like grieving. But one of the things it's doing, I think, is definitely talking about this character being lost in translation. This character who, she's been in Japan for a while, but maybe she's never fully settled in Japan. And maybe that is now coming out more than it ever has, because she has to deal with this extreme situation. And she has to go one-on-one with like the mother-in-law. And it fits quite nicely into the themes of the show, to do with technology, to do with maybe how technology can be isolating sometimes if you overuse it and things like that. But it sets the mood very well, this opening scene where she's being asked questions, and because at this point he hasn't been found, the husband, the body as well, like the woman at the desk asks her what he looks like and what he did, and she has these quite sarky responses to things, so she flips it around on the woman at one point. It's like, well, what does he do? And she says, I think she says something like he makes shoes or something like that in a factory, but he's in prison now. And Rashida Jones, Susie's response to that is, well, I can tell you what he's wearing now. That's a really darkly funny line, but it's really natural and well played, the scene, because you can just tell by her face how put out and how fed up she's getting with all the questions at this like really awkward, difficult time. And there's something about the opening of the first episode that sort of shows you that sometimes maybe there's this push to like try and process things, and there's this push to kind of force people to process things and to be open with their emotions. And I don't know, again, if this is a cultural thing, if this is true to how they deal with it in Japan, but in this case, it seems like it's an extension of the place where he works, this sort of tech place, and because she's just lost someone, they do encourage her to go in this group, and they encourage her to cry. And that's another awkward moment where she says, well, actually, I cried earlier. I cried on the plane. And then he's like, well, we feel it's never good to cry alone. And it's just really awkward, and you can see what they're going for. But one of my favourite scenes actually in episode 1 is when she goes to this bar And I think it's just after she's gotten like the robot and she sort of put it to sleep for the night. So she goes to this bar and she meets this woman, Mitzi, I think her name is. And I really like that scene because, again, those two actors had good chemistry and they're sort of sparring off each other. But it's, again, this sort of random meeting where they do unexpectedly hit it off. And it's just this funny little scene where, like, it's a cocktail bar and Mitzi, like, gives her this drink which she asks for, and like Mitzi is really nervous, doesn't think she's made it that well, and I think she hasn't, but Susie is just like, she just wants a drink, so she can't be bothered like making a big thing of it. And then Mitzi wants to make her another one to make up for it, and Susie asks for like, I think she asked for like a vodka or something like that, something which isn't a cocktail, and Mitzi has the lines back, well, it's a cocktail bar, and it just goes back and forth, and they slowly start talking about their sort of lives in particular, and it's Mitzi who brings up how these robots have been used for sinister like purposes. It's actually going really far down the path of like this kind of what these things in the future could well be used down, because Mitzi, it's revealed, is a lesbian, and she's recently broken up with her girlfriend. And she says she even has sex with the robot, like it's explained in the episode, but then that's the whole thing. And immediately when she says that, it crosses your mind that maybe there's going to be a scene like that with Susie and her robot at some point. They would have to figure it out, and the robot does seem gendered as female, but immediately it crosses your mind that in a future episode that could happen. The most we get in this is then at the end of episode 2, she wants her in the bed with her. She wants her next to her. And once again, I think it's going down this idea of like, well, she could be some sort of a replacement for the husband, maybe. But as soon as like Mitzi mentioned that in the bar, I thought that could be a thing later on at some point. But it's a funny episode, funny conversation. They both have good senses of humour, and it just goes from there. There's really sort of sharp exchange where, like, I can't remember the line now. It's sort of gone out of my head, but like Susie at some point has this funny sort of line about, hey, I guess that's why you're not good at mixing cocktails, and Mitzi's like, well, maybe that's why you don't have a good personality for people, or something. I can't remember the actual, but it was a good, like, sharp sort of an exchange. But it's actually Mitzi who mentions this idea of hackers. There are people out there who can hack into the robots, because she says then that's how this robot was used to push a guy down the stairs. And that comes into play at one point because Susie is interested in this, because she wants maybe to get inside the robot's head and try and find out stuff about the husband and the past and stuff. So she goes to like this kind of fixer type place, and as soon as she mentions like, I think you can hack into these, and she mentions a certain bit of like info she's been given, then the guy immediately gets awkward and says no, that can't be done, and he closes down the conversation, says I've got to go and finish my lunch, and then later on the daughter or whoever's working with him comes out and gives her like a bit of information that could help. But so there's definitely kind of things going on in the background of all this where maybe there's like conspiracy type things, And it's revealed late in the episode 1 that she is actually being watched. So Susie is being watched by people in the control room. And as things go on, it becomes clear that possibly the husband isn't dead. Because in episode 2, someone comes to the door at some point and the robot answers. And it's at this point where we get a flashback of the first time that Susie and Mecca slept together. And it seems to be this thing of, well, that's them at their most happiest. And then it cuts to the robot coming back, Sunny coming back. And she's got the shoes in her hands. And she says these are Mecca's shoes. And it's been confirmed they are his shoes. And they were taken from the wreckage. So it turns into a sad moment where it appears as though it's been confirmed that he is dead. But then we cut to outside and we see another robot come over to this shady looking guy, and it says to him, or he says to the robot, was she convinced? And the robot says it was the other robot, but then he was convinced. So that makes it clear that it was all a thing, and that the husband, not that he's definitely not dead, but it does seem that they wanted her to believe that he was dead for some reason. And that we've seen, because I think it might be the same guy who we saw watching her in episode 1. And like early on, like not long after she gets the robot, she wants to get rid of it quickly, and there's quite a comical scene of her taking it up on the bridge, and she basically just wants to throw it in the river, but then it's too heavy, like she can't get it all the way up and over. So in the end she just leaves it on the bridge, and she's sort of put it to sleep. So I guess she's assuming or hoping that the house is far enough away and it won't find its way back. But of course it does help find its way back, and it's probably got the memories installed by the husband to know where the house is. And then there's some sort of funny, quirky stuff around the house between them, and there's quite a black moment of comedy where she wants the robot to tell her what the husband was doing in the lab, and the robot, Sunny, I should just say Sunny, but Sunny is getting really awkward and you'll be mad with my answer, and she's like, I promise I won't be mad. And then the robot says, I don't know what he was doing, and she kind of does get mad, having said she wouldn't. But it's one of those funny exchanges where the robot is like, she doesn't tell her the whole thing. It's like, if she had just said, I don't know, then there would have been no confusion. But the confusion comes from her saying, I don't think you'll like my answer. So that's what Sunny says. Sorry, that's what Susie says in exchange, is that I thought you had an actual answer. So it again is getting into those like breakdown of communication between humans and robots. But I'm glad that it's got the sort of tone it has, and that I don't think it's ever going to be like too cheesy or over the top, or it's not going to go too far into like the quirky stuff. But it's just got a decent little mystery to it. But the appeal so far for me is Rashida Jones, who is so good in the role. I hope we do see more of Mitzi, because they had good chemistry and it seems like they could have a good vibe, a good sort of link. But also just being this quirky sort of look at like modern technology and what the future could be maybe when it comes to AI and robots. But so far it's benefiting, I think, from being quite low-key, like a slow burn, low-key sci-fi character drama. And as that, I think it works pretty strongly in the first 2 episodes. So that's my thoughts on episodes 1 and 2 of Sunny. I will continue with it. I will be reviewing episode 3 when that comes out next week, so look out for that. Let me know your thoughts in the comments if you've seen the first 2 episodes. Like and subscribe. You can also support me on patreon.com/borednow, and that's just for $1 a month if you want to help the channel a little bit more monetarily. And speaking of TV, but maybe a bit older when it comes to TV, you can check out tomorrow night live on stream, me and Rachel McDonald. We will be doing the 4th and final part of our top 50 TV characters list. So we've both come up with a list. We've done 3 previous parts, and tomorrow we're going to do the 4th and final part on a live stream. So it will be 15-1 for both of us. So if you want to join in the live stream tomorrow night, then you can react to us in the comments as we run through our final picks, or if not, the stream will be up later on for you to view on the replay. But just something if you want to check it out, if you're into TV and into like various characters. So, and you can find the other 3 parts to the list already on the channel. But thanks for listening. Keep watching TV. See you guys soon.